let me know if the audio is terrible. It's been a problem recently. Also, if you didn't get a chance to watch the last live stream, the third eye, I really encourage you. I know the audio is not great, but I feel like that was like one of the most important bits of content that I've ever created, and it so far has gotten 3 dislikes, and I take some solace in the thought that the only reason I could think of that anyone would dislike that live stream is that they're just too dumb to understand and it was offensive to them. Or I think that when you challenge people's uh, beliefs, uh, they get angry, and that's kind of the one of the core subjects of this live stream. And I think what might have gotten the dislikes was the fact that I was saying that you don't want to decalcify your pineal gland because it's actually 2 calcium carbonate crystals, so it doesn't make any sense. I just I was it usually don't like get bothered by that kind of thing, but I just really felt that that was like one of the best things that I'd offered, and I was really disappointed when I saw the thumbs down. Um, so go watch it and like it if you haven't already. Uh, how's the audio quality? Can anybody tell me? I see a lot of people jumping on and jumping right back off, so I can only assume that it's not great. Um, but I'm in the Amazon rainforest. What am I going to do about it? Okay, so what really got me, what provoked me to do this topic tonight was this guy who was very normal looking and soft spoken and very polite, and he was saying a lot of stuff that I've said in the past that has lost me subscribers and got my Facebook page deleted and my channel demonetized. But he had found a way to say it so that he was much less confrontational. And of course, I'm totally open to the idea that I could work on that. And I really appreciated, though, okay, right on. I really appreciated that this guy had done this, because rather than calling people liberals or conservatives and then criticizing them, he just called everyone postmodernists and threw everyone under the bus together. And I think by not directly labeling people, all of the people that he was addressing wouldn't really feel like he was confronting them directly. So I thought it was a really brilliant way to try to maintain a dialogue with the people that you're trying to communicate with, because people are not receptive to this stuff. And in fact, psychological studies have been done that have established that when you challenge people's cognitive dissonance, who the guy? Oh, I shared it on Facebook. You're going to have to scroll through my profile. I don't remember. It was something reasonable something. I'm sorry, I don't recall. But we're going to go through what exactly he said. It was on TikTok that I found him. But anyways, when you challenge people's cognitive dissonance, they don't say, "Oh, thank you very much for illuminating me." It actually triggers a fight or flight response. So even if you're right, and I mean, you can trust me, you can hold up proof of something that people don't want to hear. They'll say, "Show me proof," and then you show them proof, and they'll maybe act like it's not there, or they'll just delete you, or whatever. But they're almost never receptive. And it really makes me wonder about other studies I've seen where they've concluded that people, when presented with new information, are readily willing and able to adapt their beliefs. I see that as like the most unique individual. For the most part, people are not willing to do that. And one of the more surprising elements of 2020 and 2021 for me has been the degeneration of liberals in general. 20 years ago, a liberal was a person that supported your right to smoke marijuana, that didn't want to see the environment get destroyed, that was for reasonable policies and reasonable expectation to human freedom, and civil liberties, and I think they kind of still think that that's what they're doing, but something weird has happened. And so this guy that I was talking about earlier, he was talking about what a radical postmodernist would tell you they believe. And so this actually could apply to either a progressive conservative, or I don't know how they put it, when you're conservative but you're not all the way conservative, um, or most liberals, right? They say they believe in racial equality, sexual equality, free speech, and cultural equality, right? Like most people would say that they believe in those things. But what they're actually acting like they believe is that one race is a problem, that one gender is a problem, that you should censor offensive speech, and that one culture is a problem. And you can't have both. You can't say I want paragraph A and paragraph B. You need to be your actions need to be congruent with your philosophy, with your politics, with your I mean, it looks really bad. And so when we are not congruent in this way, when we have this massive, blatant hypocrisy spewing out all over everyone, it really does a tremendous amount of damage to those areas where we are correct, right? It makes it really easy to tear people down and to dismiss them. And of course, your opponents, in this case mostly conservatives, are going to jump on all of these things and say, well, you can't say that you're not racist and then blame white males for every problem on earth. And you can't talk about race and actually consider statistics, because the thing about sociological and cultural problems is that they have to be addressed at their root cause and according to the objective realities that constitute the issue, right? You can't treat cancer as if it's a cold, because you will die. And so when it comes to sociological problems, we have this thing where a lot of the realities are not necessarily politically correct sounding. And so if you make a valid point, oftentimes it's possible for the radical postmodernists to call you racist even though you might be right, or to call you sexist even though you have a valid point. And so this is actually damaging the potential for constructive dialogue between the two sides. And the thing is, both sides do it. There are, and it's slightly different on each side of the aisle, because we have different demographics with different psychological dispositions, with different incomes, with different influences coming to bear on their perception of the reality that they're living in. And so the tools that the media will use to manipulate the liberal are not identical to the strategies that they will apply to manipulate the conservative. But I'll give you an example of the same kind of cognitive dissonance that comes up on the conservative side. California is a great example, because they'll say, like, one of the big criticisms of California is, oh, it's this liberal free-for-all where you can just do whatever you want, and then they'll also say, oh, this liberal taking away all your freedoms, you can't fart without a permit. And which is it, guys? Which is it? Are the liberals creating a complete free-for-all and that's what's destroying everything, or is it a total totalitarian police state? It can't be both, And it's actually even worse when you look at it on the federal level, the way the conservatives will talk about Biden-Harris, who I hate just as much as they do. But, they do the same thing. They what's going on, man? Good to see you here. They do the same thing, they're complete Nazis, looking to create a police state, or they're trying to get rid of they'll just have a total free-for-all. It can't be both, So the reason that I try to really push us all to focus on our cognitive dissonance and selective perception and all of these things, and by the way, we do have tools, we know how to correct these things. The problem is, the initial hurdle is to get everyone to admit that they need to fix these perceptual problems with their perceptual apparatus, right? I mean, they're ubiquitous. Everyone has it to some degrees in certain ways. I'll give you an example from my own life. I did a flat Earth debate about a year ago, and I was on the side of science. And so, I was debating them for a while before I realized that there were religious motivations, and, I wasn't expecting that. That kind of threw me off. And then it started getting like really wackadoodle. Like the guy that I was debating said, well, sun's electric, you can tell by looking at it. And at that point, I pretty much just shut down, and I was like, I'm not even trying anymore, because pour me another glass of wine, like, I'm just, I'm done with this. They literally, one of them in the audience stood up and accused me of witchcraft. It didn't occur to me that I had been arguing with Christians about, on the side of science, and one of the flat earthers literally accused me of witchcraft. Like, somehow it just never processed, and that's not quite the same level of cognitive dissonance that we're talking about in the political arena, but I'm just saying, like, all of us have a tendency to miss the obvious, and oftentimes there are things in our environment that we fail to perceive until we've seen them once. This is a really common experience with mushroom hunters. The morel mushrooms are famous for this, right? And I experienced it so dramatically that, it's not the kind of thing you're expecting to actually have happen to you. But, we were looking for morels all day, and we didn't see any. And then we were getting ready to give up, putting our jackets on, zipping them up, heading to the car. And right as my friend looked down to find his zipper, he looked right at a morel that was right by our feet. And we're like, what? So we go back out into the same area that we had just been walking back and forth tediously, meticulously for hours and hours and hours. And there were giant morels in plain sight everywhere. It's an incredible thing. It really is. But sometimes it's like your mind, actually I can totally explain it, I think. It's like this theory that Dennis McKenna has that there are mechanisms in the nervous system that are filtering out the overwhelming majority of the sensory input, right? So there's all these bandwidths of light and radiation and energy pulsing all around everywhere, and you take psychedelics and it's like a reducing valve gets turned off and suddenly it's all perceptible. Not only that, but that's why telepathy is so common with ayahuasca and magic mushrooms and all this kind of stuff. It's just that your normal feed, right? You cannot process having your own thoughts in your head, your girlfriend's thoughts, all the neighbors and shit. Like, you need it to be focused into, like, a little beam. And every now and then, things slip in because it's not airtight. And that's why most of us experience, telepathy or clairvoyance or something like that, like 2 or 3 times in 10 years. We're absolutely sure that it happened. Side note, if you take a lot of psychedelics, you'll notice that it starts to happen routinely, and it's more like the standard rather than the exception. But that's not the only time it happened. The first time I found Azareshians, the same thing. Speaking of psychedelics, we were literally crawling on the ground looking for them. Didn't find any. We're leaving. We found a little dried one on the sidewalk, and I was like, wait a minute. Went back in. The same place I had been crawling on my hands and knees, they were everywhere. And they're big red, orange caps. They were obviously everywhere. And so what I'm saying is that we do this with everything. And what I'm saying about the filters is that when the mind has a precedent, like it has a pattern, it has a job that it does repetitively, it is going to, it does it, it applies that filter. And so I think that it's not just gamma rays and radiation that are getting filtered out. We have Swiss cheese holes for our perception, right? And that's all we see is like these little tunnels through the block of cheese. But most of it is just a block of cheese that we can't see through, And it's a really crazy thing, and it is used by the media to pit people against each other. I want to thank black people, while we're on the subject, for realizing what the race shit in the United States is really about before white people. Really incredible, because you would think that people that have been the victim would jump on a chance to just be victimized and just like milk it for everything. They did that in the 90s, actually. People called it pulling the race card, and they would joke about it. They definitely did that in the 90s a lot, you know. But now, you know, if you get on TikTok, black people are saying white people. It's not really institutionalized racism. The elite are pitting us against each other. They're trying to make us fight over crumbs and distract us by making us think that we all hate each other, you know? And I mean, I've talked about this before with George Floyd and that whole thing, you know? There were plenty of totally innocent, amazing black people that didn't have a criminal record and hadn't done anything wrong at all that were killed right around the same time. A bunch of white kids too, like little kids. 6-year-old was shot a bunch of times. A 16-year-old was shot in the back of the head. You can hear the other cop in the video say, "Hey man, nice shot." Like he's super excited that an unarmed 16-year-old white kid just got shot in the back of the head. Like, and you know, there are lots and lots of black people trying to tell white people, you're being manipulated. Yes, there's institutionalized racism, but that's not the point. They're using it as a wedge issue. They're using it as a way to keep people divided. And it's actually making things worse. You know, and I said that in 2020, man, I was like, wait a minute. Black Lives Matter is not good. Fighting racism is good. It is totally good. But even the name Black Lives Matter, it doesn't matter what their intentions are. It's going to be divisive. It's going to set people off. It's not a good name even, you know, like this whole thing, something's off. And a lot of people would call me racist just for saying that. Like, you deviate from the narrative at all, and the pressure to conform from the herd is extraordinary. It's absolutely extraordinary. And so that, in and of itself, is enough to affect people's perception. It's not that difficult to convince your own mind to perceive things to be consistent with this. Okay, and what is the Asch experiment? Let's talk about that. So I can't remember the year, but you guys can look it up. Dr. Asch, A-S-C-H, right? He did an experiment where he proved that people will lie. Hello, Alex. People will lie in order to conform to a collective perception they know to be incorrect. That is happening all over the place right now. It is a huge, huge issue. And so in this case, I'll give you some examples. They did a whole bunch of different versions of this experiment. And one of them was that they had like a bunch of lines, right? Like 4 lines. They kept it pretty simple, so it was super, super obvious, right? Well, Fernando, this is the majority of people because we're talking about a fairly large study and then, you know, good cross sections taken from different demographics and mixed up pretty well. I mean, it was like 85% of people that would knowingly give a wrong answer in order to conform to the what they perceive to be the herd perception, right? So they had like 4 lines, and one of them was half the size of the other 3. And then they would have a group of people where everyone was in on the experiment except for one person. And so everyone would say that the really obviously short line was the same size as all the rest of the lines. And the only person that wasn't in on the experiment would answer the same way as the group in nearly every single case. So when people are criticizing the mainstream narrative and saying to people, look, you're believing things just because the collective believes it, there is hard science to establish that that is absolutely going to be the case the overwhelming majority of the time. If you can create the perception that something is true, 85% of people, I think the number may have been higher in these experiments. I'm pretty sure it was 88, but definitely over 80, right? 80-something% of people will give a wrong answer if they think that's what the collective perception is. And so, you know, again, you guys, like this, it's great and wonderful for me to sit here and explain that there is science behind this, that we know how it works, that we know why it works. That doesn't really get us any closer to doing something about it, which is what we really need. And again, we have those tools. And so, really what needs to happen at the end of the day is that people that are guiding psychedelic experiences, ayahuasca facilitators, and people in therapy sessions, because this is when your brain is at the most neuroplastic, right? These people need to have an intent to create holistic perception in the people that are coming to them. I mean, that's definitely on my agenda, and it's not about telling people how to think. Well, what to think. Telling people how to think is what needs to happen, but not what to think. It's really an insane situation. It really is. But it's what we're dealing with. And the media and the elite exploitation of it is incredible. And, for some of you guys out there, I know have actually bought into one side's narrative or the other. And I just really encourage you to really examine that, look at your environment. Like for yourself, you look at your environment. Where did you grow up? What do the people around you think? And I think also that one of the most obvious things is that we have the people on the left believe that the people that represent them in government or whatever are the good guys, and then the people on the other side are the bad guys. And it's like, if they think that the right has been tricked, why are they so convinced that they couldn't have been tricked and vice versa? We have to allow our perception of the faults of other people to inform us of our own. Because, what are you but my reflection? Who am I to judge or strike you down, as Maynard James Keenan so eloquently sung, right? And it really is the truth. It is one collective universal mind coming to terms with itself, and even though earlier, I said that a lot of the tactics that are used to manipulate people in different demographics, a lot of the same tactics are used as well. We are all one consciousness. That is absolutely the case, And this idea of being able to remove filters and actually access and have that experience of the universal mind, I cannot give you my subjective experience, you know what I mean? All I can say is that I have had experiences that prove that absolutely, but that can only matter so much to other people that I'm talking to, because that's my experience, And I would just encourage all of you to seek out those experiences. Come see me if you can, for sure. I'm feeling a lot better, by the way. I don't know if my health is actually getting better, because there's a lot of ups and downs. You guys are always asking, and I appreciate it. Also, there is a poll in the community. I'm launching the other channel so that we can be monetized. But listen to this. Speaking of manipulation and censorship, when I went to launch the new channel today, I wanted to call it Spiritual Revolution. And the word revolution, the letter R was in parentheses. So it's not really even, it's like very obvious that it's not a call to any kind of uprising, right? YouTube will not let you use the word revolution in the title of the channel. And I can almost guarantee that one of the reasons my live streams dropped so much is that I was calling them psychedelic revolution. And so the algorithm was deprioritizing the thumbnails in people's feeds. But isn't that insane? You cannot use the word revolution in the title on a YouTube channel. Somebody was telling me today also that they've had to rename the Bob Marley album Uprising Surprising in order to sell it. Like, they are systematically neutering the population, basically. Surprising, really? They changed uprising to surprising. Really, really incredible, And then another one from the right-wingers. Let's talk some more cognitive bias, all right? Biden's undoing everything that Trump did. Biden's just doing everything Trump did. He said he was going to undo it all, but they're saying both things. They really are. They're saying both things. At least Trump didn't start any wars and he was going to bring our troops back home from Afghanistan. Biden's bringing our troops back from Afghanistan. What a moron. You know what I mean? Like, people don't even notice when they're saying they hold two completely opposing points of view. Like the liberal thing with race and sexual equality and cultural equality and all that. Apparently white people, you can't be racist. I actually hear people say that all the time. And again, thank you to all the African Americans out there right now fighting all this stuff, man. I love seeing it on TikTok all the time. They're like, you guys, what the hell is this? This is like abusive to white children at this point. Like, they're embarrassed to be white. Like, they have guilt for just being a little white child. You're not helping anything with this approach, And again, it's a glaring, incredible bit of cognitive bias. Well, dude, you can see it all over the internet. I mean, it's definitely, there are people on the conservative side saying that stuff. Well, yeah, they're doing it on purpose. It's not. I noticed this like 20 years ago myself, and I can't remember exactly what the issue was, but there was something going on with racial tensions, and it had gotten so bad that black guys in San Francisco were just shooting at random white people. It was after some incident or something, and it was only like 5 years ago, 7 years ago, something like that. But it was getting really bad, and I saw they actually used a black newscaster to basically throw black people under the bus and create racial tension. And I remember just sitting there watching this newscaster and thinking, like, is he in on it? Because he was really intelligent. Like, I just couldn't imagine that he didn't understand what he was doing. Is he just that brainwashed that he doesn't understand what he's doing, or does he actually not care and he's bought and sold, or what the fuck is going on? But it doesn't matter. I mean, what does matter is that we have to have the courage to be honest with ourselves. At the end of the day, all we can really do is make these adjustments in ourselves and lead by example. Because arguing with people, man, is just like, you might as well just bash your head against a brick wall all day. It's just not going to do you any good. I mean, I'm almost at a loss for words. I never run out of words. Do me a favor, guys. Hit the like button, share, subscribe, support us on Patreon or one of the GoFundMes. The Warani thing, we really want to do that. Fundraising is going really slow, and we have less time than we thought to. We have like 2 weeks to raise the money to go do this. We ran into one of the Warani ladies today, and she was so nice. Our friends just came to visit us. They got a really nice welcome. The Warani happened to be there with spears and the full dress and everything, and monkeys all running around, and we were eating worms and stuff. Like, it's just really great. Way home, we found some cubenzas growing in a field. I don't know, man. Is there anything you guys have on your minds that you want to add to this discussion, or any questions that you want me to respond to, or anything? I just wanted to kind of check in and talk about this stuff, because it drives me crazy, man. I mean, I should have been more prepared with more examples, and I'm sure I could think of them pretty easily, but, and like I said, I think they really are trying to antagonize both sides, Biden and Harris are not radical left people. They're not. They're especially, Biden has always been like one of the most right-leaning Democrats. Yeah, well, COVID, and now it seems to me that they're introducing the terrorist threat element so that they can like just strip every civil right and privilege, and it's just like the final nail in the coffin. I mean, think about it, you guys. Like, just all of a sudden, it's time to leave Afghanistan after 20 years. Just all of a sudden, like, okay, that's enough of that. Let's just get out of here. What in the hell, I mean, it's just so ridiculous. It's probably because they have already secured the poppy fields and everything, and so now they're moving on to Pakistan so they can get a bunch of plutonium or something. Other than either that, sometimes I suspect that China actually has control of the right, and or no, Russia has control of the right, and China has control of the left already. Like the United States is already totally lost. It's just gone, and people are just not able to pick up on it. In fact, I'll tell you a quick story, and it's absolutely true. I can't say exactly who this was, but it's not like it was a random stranger on the street, someone I knew very well. He definitely was a ranking military officer with top secret clearance. And one day we all got drunk, and I said something about war with China, and this was like 20 something years ago. And he said, he started crying, and he said that China's already won the war. It's over. It's been over. It didn't even have to get physical. It was just digital. And he was crying, you know. So, and when you look at a map of global trade from like, oh God, what was it, 2008 or something, and in 2020, I saw it the other day. It was like, blue for the United States, the whole thing, almost, and little spots where China had to trade. And now it's totally reversed. So, and then think about this, okay? The U.S. has beef with Russia and China. They couldn't defeat Afghanistan. And it's not even Afghanistan, it's just the Taliban. So, and a couple of years ago, in 2020, I was posting like, you guys, this is all heading towards war with China. When the COVID thing first happened, just the way that the fingers were immediately pointed, you don't just do that shit when you're a world power. You know what I mean? Like, and it was almost instant. Like, as soon as it hit, they were like, you did it. You don't do that. You know what I mean? Like, unless you're trying to create hostility. It was insane. From a diplomatic point of view, that's just not what you do. Like, I don't understand how people are so naive. It really is just that they think that these superpowers are just going to be sloppy and stupid, and that this stuff just happens. That's so goddamn stupid to think that that's how it actually works, Or to think that all the problems in the United States are actually just from bumbling bureaucratic idiocy and old people that are out of touch. It's so dumb. It's so dumb to think that these superpowers that have, access to Ivy League think tanks and billions of dollars in resources and multiple intelligence agencies are just like, yeah, we're just kind of dumb and don't really know what we're doing. You know what I mean? Like, come on, people. How brainwashed can people be? And what they're doing is that they are playing on fear largely. That's like the number one trigger to facilitate all of this shit. Is that people are fucking cowards. Really, they're just so terrified to think that they don't know what's going on this planet and that they're not in control at all. I think the biggest hurdle that we have to cross in order to really get like a majority to open their eyes and realize how bad the situation has gotten. I mean, they're just so afraid. I don't really blame them. Oh man, where was I going with that? I had another idea that I was along the lines of like using fear to manipulate people, and they just, it's just too much, I guess, to even entertain the possibility that things are as bad as they are, that things have gotten this far, and that their leaders are actually this bad. But they are, clearly. Clearly. Yeah, I mean, I think that China already, you know, China already won. Maybe Russia and China are battling over what's left of the United States, but the United States is not battling to maintain its sovereignty. It's already toast. It's gone. It's done. I mean, what am I allowed to talk about the jabs? What is that? What is their end game? See, and this is one of the things that people, this is where the right gets lost a lot. And it's partly because of religion, right? Because they believe that there's just like this like evil force that is, well, humanity is ascending, but it's always descending too. I still think that that is just inevitable. That if anything moves this way, it's something else moves that way in opposite, equal and opposite reaction, right? I think that these universal laws apply to everything. And I think it's difficult for people to wrap their heads around because it seems too esoteric or metaphysical. Oh, the vaccines. Yeah, I mean, I might get like deleted or something, but um, remember what I was talking about in the last live stream about how I had realized all this stuff about electromagnetic energy and how the brain works, and then I discovered that the brain is actually full of the most magnetic material on Earth, or the most magnetic material known. I think it also exists in asteroids, so it's not just on Earth. But and so that and also that there are higher concentrations in the areas of the brain that deal with motor sensories or motor skills, right? So um, this idea that like 5G would be used to interact with magnetic proteins in our bloodstream. I mean, this is one of the things that everyone just made fun of the conspiracy theorists so hard for. And then I can't remember who it was, but it was definitely like a mainstream publication just put out something that said that they have just developed a magnetic protein that can be used to control our nervous system. Like it was mainstream news. Um, The thing is, though, I don't know that they would even need to do that. We already are. Our brain is already full of magnetic minerals. Um, the end game, that I've never understood. It's impossible to understand for someone like me what could possibly motivate these people. Because for myself, if I have any more than I need, and I see someone that needs it more than me, I have a tendency to just give it to them. I don't really have a very developed sense of ownership. Even it's actually to a fault, I guess. Um, but it's true. So it's very difficult for me to understand uh, how it is that people could be have enough wealth to last for many, many generations and still be willing to harm and um, revenge and deploy and rumble thee forth to the opposite end of the earth because they don't believe in what's in the book and that makes them bad. So verily we must choppeth them up and stompeth them down, or renteth a nice French bomb to poof them out of existence, leaving their real estate right where we need it so we can build more temples in which to praise our God. Because he can really get down to business. He wrote that book, didn't he? And besides, if we're just following God's orders, we can't be dumb, because if we're dumb, then God is dumb. And maybe even a little ugly on the side. Oh, man. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'll tell you what intuitively came to me 20 years ago was that there was going to be a massive reduction in population. And so that has been a little eerie for me to see. I mean, a lot of this stuff I just sort of intuited a long time ago. And over the years, I convinced myself that I must have been young and foolish. And because I think I wanted to think I had a future ahead of me in a normal world where I could play music and do all of the things that a wealthy American does without, ending up in a concentration camp or whatever. So I kind of managed to convince myself that all these sort of conspiratorial things were were wrong. And of course, as time has progressed, in fact, when they legalized marijuana in California was the moment that I told all my outlaw friends there, this is not good. People think that it's good, but I see the New World Order coming, because what that did is it crushed the last truly free populations in the United States by taking away their income. And I mean, literally millions of people were just suddenly like put out of business with the stroke of a pen. And you know, this is where, you know, liberals are just so naive because they really seem to think that you can just give the government all the power in the world and they're just going to look out for everyone's interest and it's all fine and dandy. And that is just the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard in my entire life. I mean, if you believe that people that kindle the same energy that lights the stars on women and children in Japan are ethical, decent people, and I don't care if it's not exactly the same ones. If anything, they've gotten worse, right? Obviously, over time, right? People need to realize that they're that bad. They actually did that, you know? If it was like the Germans that had done that to Japan, like we would still be talking about how evil the Germans are. We are because of the Holocaust, so maybe that was a bad example, but say Australia had dropped nukes on cities full of women and children and burned their fucking shadows into the sidewalks, we would still be talking about how evil Australians are. But the United States will kindle the same energy that lights the stars upon their enemies and then point fingers at the terrorists, like, it's pretty insane. Pretty goddamn insane. And the thing is, like, we just have to get it through our heads, like, what that actually is. Like, my family, very sweet people. You know, my son, he always give his mom a bite of whatever he's eating before he even eats some. He catches moths. He's not even 2 years old. He catches moths and wants to take them outside and let them go. You know, my partner is blameless. People like that were nuked by the United States. Like, what was it, like 130,000 people or something? That is the reality of your leaders, right? And I have never believed that they would treat their own citizens differently just because they are their own citizens. I think that is pure delusion. That is total naivety, right? People say, oh, well, they wouldn't kill their own citizens. Well, they have, for one thing. I mean, every time they send kids to war, they know, like, you can tell yourself whatever you want. They're trying to protect you, or, you know, they're trying to bring freedom. I mean, if you guys really need the lie exposed, all you have to do is really think about the excuses they have given us for the wars. We need to free the Iraqis. If they really cared about human freedom, why aren't we going to war with the countries that have all the child slaves and shit? Obviously, it's not about that. I think there are very few people left that really believe that the United States goes all over the planet fighting evil for humanitarian causes or whatever. It's, how do we combat it? Well, look, all we can do really is take responsibility for our own actions and try to set a different standard by our own conduct. And so the first thing that we have to do is not take sides and not adopt a narrative, like a prepackaged narrative, right? Because all of them are wrong. All of them are true and false, and it is both true and false to say that they are true and false, because it's such a scrambled bunch of psychological warfare, and the propaganda is so sophisticated that, you know, your only hope of making any sense out of it is to develop the capacity to balance skepticism with open-mindedness and to be free of attachment. You know how the Buddha said that suffering comes from attachment. And so if we can free ourselves from the idea that we know anything at all, then we have some chance of actually discovering truth, right? That is, I think, one of the most difficult things for anyone is to actually admit that they don't know shit. And, you know, that unless you are witnessing something with your own eyes, you can't really trust any media outlet, you know? There is no source of good information. There's no good source of objective information about anything because almost no one is objective. right? Everyone's faulty, has faults in their perception. Um, so, and I've been terrible about this, I think, over the last couple of years because I just became so cynical because I realized that people are so committed to their narrative. They are so um, capable of holding these totally, not even necessarily opposing viewpoints, but even antagonistic viewpoints simultaneously and not even noticing it. Uh, and I have been kind of utopian, I think, in my concept of what an end game could look like for humanity, that we could transcend all of this insanity and unify and stuff. But I had to remind myself that I've been living in little progressive bubbles like Northern California and Southwestern Colorado, where like everyone is cool, everyone is open-minded. The cops are like, they're not gonna shoot you, you know, they're nice. Like, well, in Northern California they were scarier, but you know what I mean? Like, I realized I was in these little bubbles, and that sometimes when I was contemplating all this stuff and thinking, like, okay, if we elevate our consciousness and we have entrainment, so everyone's, consciousness is going to entrain to the highest cycle because that's how entrainment works, and entanglement. So we know that all of the energy in the universe is connected, responding instantly to the state of all the other energy. All we have to do is elevate our consciousness, and it'll pull the overall net of consciousness with us. And I still think that that's true, but when I think about the size of the cities, and when I think about war-torn places like Syria and Afghanistan, and most of the Middle East, and China and their super cynical culture, and the brainwashing and the religious connections that people have that they're loath to let go of, and the fact that really a postmodern liberal is just as committed to his narrative, whether it's bullshit or not, as the Christian is to their faith. It's the same kind of dogmatic commitment to herd conformity rather than objective, courageous perception that's actually based on reality. When I think about all of that, it seems that there is no way that we could ever fix this. I mean, just being realistic, and then I go back to this idea that what we observe, we tend to personify or to project human qualities to what we're observing. And we have very human reactions and interpretations. But one way that I think we can kind of come to terms with all of this, and at least be at peace with the process, is that really none of this is happening. It's all just energy. And the universe is an equation balancing. So 2 equals 0, right? This duality is collapsing in on itself, and eventually all of the +1 and -1 will create 0 until it returns to nothingness. And so when you have peace, you have equal warp. So let's call it something different. The creative energy, destructive energy, constantly creating each other. It's how it works. Like, life creates death, death creates life. These opposites sustain and create each other, and it's always going to be that way. So I don't know that we can ever get rid of war, or that we're ever supposed to. That this kind of interchange of, or this exchange of opposite energies is just always going to be the state of affairs. That for every person that becomes enlightened, there's a person whose ignorance increases. And the creation and destruction element, like when we created all of this technology and we built these massive empires, all of the pollution and all of the rainforests being cut down and all of that destruction is what fueled the creation of all of this other stuff. And it's just always going to be that way. So, I was kind of responding to the person that asked, like, humanity, will it ever ascend? Yes, some of us, but there's always going to be an equal and opposite reaction. And so I don't know that even the resolution of all of these conflicts is even something that is natural. And I always say we should work towards it anyways. I mean, I'm down here in the Amazon rainforest trying to fight what I know with near certainty is a losing battle. Right? The first is quiet at night. You guys know what a jungle is? Do you think jungles are supposed to be quiet at night? That's how bad the pollution is. Like the frogs are gone. Speaking of, the Chinese and the war and stuff, they're like stripping the jungle down to the ground and processing all of because I guess there's just gold in the soil just throughout the Amazon. And so now they're just plowing it all down and processing all the soil to get the gold out. And you think anyone's going to stop China? I mean, the Warani have said that, they will spear them if they see them. But, I mean, WoW throws one spear and there's going to be a hail of bullets. So it's not going to get them very far, And so I've made a commitment to be here and do that with them. Because, what else are you going to do at this point? Like, we have to make something meaningful out of our lives. We have to try to do something that matters. One of the reasons that it's become possible for the elite to take advantage of people in this way is that they have created an environment where there is a crisis of purpose. Life has no meaning. It's just blind gobbledygook matter that has randomly become animated. There's no afterlife. There's no God. There's no point. We're all going to die. So you might as well just get what you can, and it doesn't fucking matter. And, win Lambo. The cryptocurrency thing. Win Lambo, win Lambo, win Lambo. I mean, it's gotten to the point, like, people aren't even using sentences anymore. And no one even spells win. It's just W-E-N. Win Lambo, win Lambo, win Lambo. I want one too, I'm not going to lie. But I just want to, like, accomplish having be able to buy one, drive it around for 6 months and sell it and donate the money to charity or whatever, I mean, I'm not totally against capitalism. I'm not against materialism. What I am against is extremism. And that is what we have done. We have created it's just leaning so far. But what I'm saying is that if we find that purpose within ourselves, we're doing something meaningful, we're doing something that matters, we're connecting with our creativity, then you care. And you're not going to be so easily manipulated, The crisis of purpose, I think, and the detachment from spirit, however you want to think about it. The universal mind, when you look at pop culture and how shallow and it's just absolutely pathetic and disgusting, really. It's just terrible. Music is a sacred thing. Like, the universe is light and vibration. And well, okay, yeah, nonviolent resistance is all fine and well, but and my tongue is kind of tied to a certain extent. I can't really say what I think in this context. I mean, I can't say what I think really even out loud anywhere. Really. And of course, I'm all about nonviolent resistance, but at this point, they're probably just going to kill you, I would imagine. I mean, nonviolent resistance, like, let me tell you how it's going down here for nonviolent resistance. The Chinese will show up at a Shuar or Warani community, and they will say, you have 3 hours to move your village. And if you're not gone, we're going to drive through your houses with bulldozers. And they will. I've heard stories of people having to throw their children out the window because the bulldozers are smashing through their house. Refusing to move, is not going to stop the Chinese empire. It's just not. So, you know, and I mean, you can't say this enough, man, but here's the proof that, you know, the system has failed, and that the United States of America in particular, the population has lost its mind. We have been voting and walking around the streets with signs for 200 years, and it's gotten nothing but worse, and yet you still have people telling everyone, you just need the vote if you're going to change the... What the fuck are these people talking about? What the fuck are they talking about? You cannot keep repeating the same behaviors over and over, expecting a different result. And this isn't even that. This is repeating the same behavior even though every time it gets worse and worse and worse, and you are still, after 200 fucking years, thinking next time it's going to get better. This is like when people are in a relationship with a narcissistic personality disorder partner, and it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse, and they just keep saying, it's going to get better, it's going to get better, it's going to get better. Meanwhile, they're like choking to death on the blood from their broken nose, you know? It's just time to wake up and realize the only way to fix the system is going to be to break it completely. Voting and carrying signs is not going to do a fucking thing. It never has. And if I'm wrong, like, show me, like, make a coherent argument that establishes something else. Something, you know? You can't, because I'm not wrong. It hasn't done a fucking thing in 200 years. And it was actually, well, the craziest thing too, you want to talk about cognitive dissonance on both sides? I don't know how I didn't think about this earlier, but this is actually the best example of it. When Trump was running, when he won, the left was all like Russian collusion. And the proof, this is how crazy it is, the proof is actually a liberal Democrat politician sitting on a stage with Putin, this is on YouTube, accusing him of having rigged the election in the United States. Accusing Russia to their face, right? With no proof, no evidence, none at all, none whatsoever. What happened 4 years later? When the right said that the election was rigged, oh, that's so stupid, that could never happen, and you're saying it with no evidence. Gee, where have I heard this before? 4 fucking years ago. The same people. Like, seriously, that is the stupidest fucking thing I've ever witnessed in my life. It was so insane. Like, they're literally had just done, and speaking of narcissistic personality disorder, this is the type of stuff that people with narcissistic personality disorder will do. So it's like maybe the leaders with their NPD are a perfect reflection of their constituents because they're all acting like they have narcissistic personality disorder. Maybe that's it. And guess what, you guys? There's no treatment, no cure, nothing you can do for narcissistic personality disorder. Psychologists and therapists will tell you that you just have to get the people out of your life. So we just have to get the entirety of humanity out of our lives, I guess, because they all have NPD. So let's go through this one more time because it's totally real. You can check it. The Democrats accused Putin on television of rigging an election in 2016 with no evidence at all, not a shred, right? Was it 2020? When Biden was elected, even though the visual evidence is overwhelming that he did not win, right? Tons of Trump supporters, no one for Biden, and they're saying it's absolutely ridiculous that an election could be rigged, even though these same people that are saying that had just accused the other side of doing it 4 years earlier. That's facts. That's facts. And that was like almost everyone, you know? Everyone. And here's the rest of it, okay? When the left was saying that Trump cheated, an 11-year-old girl hacked one of the voting machines that they were using in 3 minutes and changed the results. The CEO of the company that makes the voting machines said that they were not secure. They also were caught having signed a contract with the CIA to use the same machines to rig elections in other countries in favor of the U.S. outcome. And by the way, most liberals will laugh in your face if you tell them that the U.S. does that kind of thing. Even though you can just look it up. Like the Freedom of Information Act, and this went to court. The thing with the CIA and the voting machine company, totally public, right? So that's a crazy thing too, that so many people will laugh in your face for saying that the government is doing something that they have been caught doing before. Like now it's ridiculous? Why is that? Someone please explain to me, like, you've caught them before, but it's insane to suggest that they might do it again. I'm sorry, I'm trying to go along with you. I want to, but I just cannot understand what you're saying. You know? Wouldn't kill their own citizens? They've done it. Why wouldn't they do it again? They kill people in other countries. You really think they view their own citizens as like the other people weren't people that they killed or something? Like, I don't think that's really real. It doesn't make any sense. If you're willing to kill people, you're just willing to kill people for profit. So we established that American elections are not secure when the Democrats were accusing the right. And then when the right's accused the Democrats, oh, that's ridiculous. How could you undermine democracy? How could you undermine democracy, right? They're going that far when they had literally accused the other side of doing it 4 years before. It is sheer fucking insanity. That example is probably the absolute best that I can give you, you know? And what kills me is that when if I post this kind of stuff on Facebook, no one responds. It's like when you really confront the stuff at its like most poignant spots, people it's just not there. They just totally just blank it out. Like it's just not there. So that's it, guys. It's been an hour-long rant, but I think, you know, and again, you know, those of you that ask, what can we do about it? My only advice is to take a lot of plant medicine, spend a lot of time meditating, and don't just adopt narratives. Like, be more critical, be suspicious. A great exercise for getting rid of cognitive dissonance and cognitive bias is to counter all of your thoughts with their opposite. That is a pretty healthy one. And try to actually believe it from both sides. And I think what you'll very rapidly find is that you don't know what you think anymore. If you really do this and get good at it, you'll realize that a lot of the stuff that you think isn't true. It's not. And you should be okay with that. And you should actually be grateful to find out that you're wrong. Because truth is like a light. Truth is creation. Truth is self-substantiating. Falsehood is decay. It is toxicity. It's dissolution. And so there's no such thing as an innocuous false belief. You know, when people talk about how, like, oh, you should respect their beliefs as long as they're not hurting anyone, like, that's not really quite right. We shouldn't ostracize people necessarily or beat them up or discriminate against them. But if people believe stupid, toxic things, we're obligated to try to explain it to them, to tell them, no, This is dumb. You know, they're going to get mad at you, but we have to try. You know, your pineal gland can't be decalcified. It's made of calcium. It's 2 calcium crystals. Shut the hell up. Stop it. You know? Just stop it with the nonsense. All of you. Oh my God. You know, we have to do the work on ourselves first. And then we have to try to find non-combative ways to, you know, because look, another thing that they do is that they kind of get people to see their neighbors who are of a different political persuasion through the lenses that their leaders have created. Yeah, actually, it's strange that you bring that up because we were just talking about that out in the fields today. But let me follow this point out here. The right in particular, I think, does this, where they convince the conservatives that the Democrat constituent are the same as their leaders, and that's not true. They are not. What it is that they don't believe that their leaders are what you're telling them they are. They don't actually support the shit that their leaders are doing. You know what I mean? Most of them just want a peaceful, productive. That's what everyone wants. You know, and one of the main polarizing things that they do is that they manage to convince their constituents that the constituents are them, and to direct all of their anger and malice at their constituents and not at them. That kind of deflection is like, so you got to remember that too. You know, the people on the other side of the political thing are not their leaders, and they don't believe you when you try to tell them what their leaders really are. And the thing is, both sides are right about the other side's leaders. They totally are, all the way. All the way. Well, except maybe not, I don't think Trump was good, but I think that they definitely, if nothing else, when I watch Trump speak, and I am really good at this, you know, I'm a lifelong outlaw. If my ability to read people was bad, I would be dead. Or in prison. Or both. He is unquestionably more sincere than Biden-Harris. Whether he is a narcissistic, you know, incestuous, lunatic, wannabe demagogue, whatever, he at least speaks from his head and his heart, whether those things are diluted or not. You know, Biden doesn't even know what the fuck he's saying, like, and he doesn't care, because if he cared, he would say something coherent. I don't care that he's almost 80. The problem is he doesn't give a fuck what's coming out of his mouth. And the reality is that it really doesn't matter, because his constituents support him no matter what kind of gobbledygook bullshit is coming out of his mouth. And the people that control him are going to do the same thing no matter what he says. So really, it's perfect that Biden can't speak a sentence, because that's the truth. It doesn't fucking matter what he says. The people that support him are going to support him no matter what, and people that control him are going to make the same decisions. And Joe Biden's got fucking nothing to do with it. So he might as well babble like a fucking idiot, because it is really of no consequence. So thank you guys. Good night. We'll try to talk about some cheerier shit. It's funny, that's why I put a rainbow in the Amazon, you know, at least that was cheery. But we'll see you guys again soon. Thank you so much for your support. Please do hit us up, PayPal, Zelle, man. We really want to go out to the jungle and do this thing with the Warani. We have a surprise for you too. I'm definitely going to bring an electric guitar. And if nothing else, I'm going to get a video of people that have definitely never heard an electric guitar before being played in the jungle, hopefully in an altered state. So that's pretty crazy. That'll be a unique kind of situation. And there's more to the story, but I'm going to keep that secret until later. But we got to raise the money or else we're not going. So thanks again for your support, and good night.